Welcome to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report on the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world. Follow the conversation using hashtag TFD News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times. Welcome back to News and Views. I am here as ever with Tom and Francis. I am thrilled to be back to the podcast after having a week off last week. So guys, how are you doing? How's your week been?
It's been really good. We've had another busy week when it comes to news. And like you said, it's good to have the trio back together again. I feel like once again, we've had 2 or 3 weeks where one of us has been missing at least every week. And so it's good to have all 3 of us back. And I'm sure we're going to have some good discussions today.
Absolutely. And Francis, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. It's an exciting sort of time in just fintech in general, because I feel like the summer holidays are coming to an end and the work life is sort of picking up again, and we're getting a lot of interesting news in the inbox. So yeah, we've got a good array of topics to be talking about today, and looking forward to getting into the discussion.
Awesome. Speaking of discussion topics, guys, what articles have you brought with you today? What are we going to be talking about? Francis, what have you brought?
So today I'm going to be talking about UK attitudes to finance over the next year.
Amazing stuff. And Tom, how about you?
I am going to talk about a new partnership between Binance and the Macau Judiciary Police, which is looking to protect locals from fraud and scams.
Great stuff. And I'm going to be talking today how PayQuicker has partnered with Thunes to offer e-wallets as a bank alternative. So 3 very interesting articles today. Tom, I'm going to pick on you first, I think, because you have piqued my interest.
Sure thing. So, as said, the crypto exchange giant Binance has struck up a new partnership with the police in Macau, one of the special administrative regions in China. What this partnership is doing is launching a new anti-scam campaign to both enhance local users' awareness of online fraud while reducing their risks of being scammed by building tailored anti-fraud alerts into the Binance system. So, under a new anti-fraud safety mechanism, when Macau users withdraw their assets from Binance, the system will pop up with a anti-scam warning notification, which has been tailored by the Judiciary Police of Macau, providing users with practical tips and contact information for their local law enforcement agencies. And thanks to this feature, users will then be prompted to stop and thoroughly reassess the risks associated with each transaction they make, which is basically trying to reduce the chance of them being scammed every single time they transact. So the local police force in Macau revealed that telecom and online fraud caused losses totaling over $38.6 million last year, with telephone and investment fraud being the predominant crimes contributing to that figure. So Binance revealed that it decided to cooperate with the Macau authorities following the success of a really similar initiative in Hong Kong. And it follows on from the beginning of their partnership earlier this year, when the crypto exchange company provided Macau officers with an online training course to enhance their crypto investigation skills. And the main reason I wanted to bring this to the table today was because we've spoken quite a lot recently about who's responsible for keeping people safe, whether it's individuals or financial institutions or local authorities. And this partnership kind of ties nicely with this. So, I just want to get your guys' take on this. Is this the kind of collaboration that you think we need to see that can stamp out this type of fraud? Or is this another kind of feature that might help in very unique situations, but won't necessarily be hugely effective? What kind of what side of the fence do you lie on? Francis, what about you?
I definitely think it's the latter of those two. And I think, like you said, it's very timely because we have spoken about, especially in terms of sort of financial education, but I guess that applies to sort of just cyber awareness and security as well. But there is always the debate of who is more responsible, the individual or the financial institution themselves. And I think a pop-up is a good start and sort of a step in the right direction in terms of making users more aware and just acting as a reminder to double check, have I got the right details? Is this going to the right person? Is this a scam or is it, or, it acts as a buffer almost, just to remind people, let's not be too hasty. Let's just double check. But I feel like users need more. I know with banks, when you set up a new payee now, what they do is they do a check to make sure that the details line up and that you get the right name of the person with the bank account. And if it's not correct, or what you've been given is different to what is registered on the bank account, you get a warning and it says, be careful, this isn't right. And then if you still want to go ahead with it, it's almost like saying to the individual, well, on your head be it, type of thing. And I feel like that might be a little bit difficult with Binance and sort of just the way cryptocurrency is, because, or, you know, digital assets, because I feel like there's so much anonymity, and just it's very difficult to really be able to say this is who you're sending it to, because that's just not the nature of digital assets. So I feel like it is definitely a step in the right direction and definitely something that's needed. But I want to say that then something more still needs to be done. But I'm not sure what else could really be done without really impacting the customer experience and really delaying a process of sort of sending funds to the point that people think, well, I don't even want to use this anymore because it takes so long to authorize sending assets and withdrawing funds. So it's a really difficult line to walk, and I'm not really sure what the solution would be. But yeah, for me, it's not quite there yet.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, especially since we do kind of have, depending on which bank you bank with in the UK, we do have similar kind of initiatives. We have different pop-ups. If you're sending large amounts of money, it goes, just take a second to think about this. We obviously have the checks to make sure that the details you've put in line up with the other ends, to make sure the name on both accounts match. But I think this is the type of initiative where if you're just getting a pop-up saying, just take a minute, make sure you're aware of what's going on, you're not being scammed, take another minute to check all the details and everything you've been sent, is potentially impactful the first 1 or 2 times you see it. But the more times you see it and you think, yeah, I've checked everything, it's fine, you think, oh, well, I'll get rid of this pop-up as soon as it appears and continue with my transaction, because people are generally very confident in their own ability to sniff out fraud. They really see an opportunity to, you know, if they've got to the point of sending a transaction, they're obviously confident in their ability that, you know, I'm confident this is correct. I'm sending this money or this crypto to this account because I'm confident that what I'm doing is correct and I'm not being scammed. So I think a last minute pop-up is unlikely to change things. But I think this kind of collaboration is a step in the right direction. You know, collaborating with police authorities in different regions is a good step, and introducing new initiatives is always going to be positive. But like you said, I think we need to go a little bit further. But, you know, Polly, what's your take on this? Do you agree with us, or do you think this is, you know, a really good step in the right direction?
Yeah, I am completely aligned with everything that you and Francis have already said. I think I was trying really hard to find some really big positivity out of this, and I think it should be said that it is something positive. It shouldn't be understated that it's great to see, you know, both the authorities and Binance taking action and realizing that, you know, there is a problem here and something needs to be done about this problem and we need to find a solution. But is this pop-up the solution to the problem? I don't think so. I think it's helpful, you know, and it's great to have, and it's something that, you know, you can see yeah, I can see why they've thought that. That's a very logical step. But realistically, you know, like Francis, you were just saying, is it going to make a lot of difference? I don't really know, and I don't really think so, because I think again, like you guys were saying about the banking app thing, and I'm sure you guys will agree, and everyone who's listening will agree. Every time that I've made a payment or some sort of transaction through my banking app, I don't even read that page anymore. I just go, yep, click through to hurry up and finish the transaction so I can get back to whatever else I was doing. So I guess it's that time old thing within fintech and financial services of having that security versus speed, and it's that constant balance of trying to figure out how to sort of balance that tightrope act of security versus speed, because then, as again, like you were saying, Francis, people will probably drop off. You know, if people have to go through too many steps to do the things that they want to do with their finances, that's when you're going to start seeing them look elsewhere for providers, because at the end of the day, customers, they want convenience and they want speed, and that's just kind of something that we have to deal with. But then when you need the security as well, that's when it gets difficult. So like on the one hand, yes, this is great. I think it's a really nice thing to see. I think it's great to see, that we're having, a look at the risk of fraud in the digital space and people are recognizing that it is an issue. I just think there needs to be more done here to actually take some steps towards solving the problem. I don't see how this is going to make that much of a difference. I mean, and if I am wrong, then let's find out, in like a year or so's time, or however long, 6 months, when they can like show some data as to if fraud is reduced because of this action, then great, love that. We'll be so happy to see that. But just realistically, I think there just needs to be more here. I think there needs to be more done to actually tackle fraud prevention, and help to, keep people safe at the end of the day. So yeah, but it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said there, and it's good to see for once that we're actually all aligned on an opinion on a topic. It's rare that all of us agree on one side of the fence, so that's good to see. But I think we've wrapped that up really nicely. And why don't we go from crypto wallets to e-wallets, which I believe is what your story is all about, Polly.
Yeah, absolutely. What a beautiful segue that was. So, yeah, what I wanted to talk about today was the news from PayQuicker and how they have partnered with Thunes, which I really hope that's how you say it. I'm not actually sure. Who is a cross-border payment infrastructure provider, to help expand its e-wallet payout capabilities worldwide. So basically, it's trying to address the increasing demand for more diverse and flexible payment methods, payout methods, particularly in emerging markets who really rely on e-wallets. So this is something that I know that we've discussed before. We've seen a lot before in like the news and stuff like that. All about having those sort of like flexible payment and alternative payment options, and e-wallets is really something that is definitely useful in an emerging market when they have underserved and sort of underbanked customers. So PayQuicker are really hoping to be able to offer access to over 120 e-wallets in these key emerging markets to be able to enhance the speed, ease, and efficiency of financial transactions worldwide. So its network actually includes a lot of popular e-wallets like Gcash in the Philippines, Orange Money and M-Pesa in Africa, and Alipay in China. And all of these e-wallets have transfer capabilities, so which ensure that the majority of funds are available to payees in real time. Like we were just saying about sort of speed, and reducing friction with the crypto wallets. That's another thing here with the e-wallets. Like people want to be able to make things, fast and have access to their money now. And I just thought this was a really interesting thing to think about, I guess, in terms of what digital wallets are doing in the underserved space, and how digital wallets are kind of like transforming the way people manage their finances. And I guess what I wanted to talk about with you guys today is how important do you think digital wallets are going to be as we kind of move forward into the future of the next couple of years, sort of thing, because I think they've always been sort of there, and they've always been really doing their thing and working really well for the people that have used them. And I guess I'm wondering, with news like this and thinking about the underserved and underbanked communities, are we going to see a lot more traction of digital wallets as we're moving forward into what's left of this year and next year, and having that flexibility of a bank alternative that can help you manage your money when the banks aren't there to help you do it. And so I think it was and there was a really interesting stat in the article actually, which 60% of individuals in the emerging markets preferred e-wallets over traditional banks. And they function as a de facto bank account for individuals in many reasons. So it's super crucial for businesses to integrate these options for their payees, because they're just not using banks; they're using these solutions instead. So yeah, I'd love to know what you guys think, I guess, about the whole thing of digital wallets in general, and where you see the industry going. I think they're a really good example of fintech solving a problem. Especially when you think of fintech solving a problem for people who don't necessarily have access to finance, which is why I think digital wallets are always really interesting to talk about. But I mean, I guess, Tom, I'll go to you first. What do you think about the whole thing?
I mean, you expect it to continue growing, specifically in Asia and Africa, where we've seen the likes of M-Pesa and Alipay really take off for years and years now. I think it's such a different culture when it comes to people's finances that I wouldn't necessarily expect to see e-wallets like taken off hugely when you look at like the Western world. If you look at the UK or the US, it's not necessarily that the way that it's done, at least, isn't going to be the exact same. And I think people would have very different attitudes to it here than they would in the likes of different parts of Africa or Asia. So I think these types of initiatives and news is always positive, because it just really improves the accessibility and the sort of, what's the word, like impact and ability that e-wallets can provide users. And we always talk about the difficulties involved with cross-border payments, and this is something that's really easing those types of transactions, whether it's for just individual users or, as this says, is businesses as well. So yeah, just overall, I think it's a really good initiative, and I'm not necessarily sure this exact type of thing will really kick off in the likes of Europe, but I could be proved wrong. But certainly in the likes of Asia and Africa, I expect to see it really taken off more and more, and see more sort of features and ways of it being accessible growing over time.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love everything you've said, and I agree with you. And I find your point about Europe very interesting, actually, because that's not something I'd considered when I was kind of like posing you the question of, is it just something that we're going to see growing popularity in the emerging markets, or we're going to start to see it in the sort of the more developed markets as well, so like Europe and America, I guess, in the West. I wonder, it'd be good to, I don't have a stat, but it'd be good to know how much e-wallets are used in Europe and elsewhere. So maybe that's something to look at for next time. But I mean, Francis, what do you think about digital wallets? What are you agreeing with Tom? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, once again, I think it's all of us in agreement, because I'd sort of made the note as well that I think e-wallets are going to be particularly prominent in developing markets, because they really help. I mean, we always talk about the traditional hurdles that, unbanked and underbanked people have had in accessing financial services, and e-wallets really are a way for them to just overcome these with very little drawbacks, to be honest. I think it's very easily and readily accessible, and it just really does what it needs to do, which is help create more inclusion and ensure that everyone has the same access to finance. I do definitely agree with both of you, though, in that I'm not entirely sure about the adoption in developed markets, because I do think we will continue to see an increase, but because of the way that things are so set in stone, I feel. I mean, we've definitely seen an impact of fintechs. I mean, we can look at neobanks, for example, like Monzo, Starling, and Revolut, and we can see how fintechs are having an impact on the market. But then when we still talk about like user base, I feel like we see that traditional banks still hold the vast majority of users. And I think in terms of just, I don't want to necessarily say loyalty, because I don't think it's loyalty, but I think it's just simplicity. It can be difficult to change financial service provider or change bank, and because of that, I feel like we're always going to see, because it's so much more accessible here in developed regions, I think because of that, we won't see as much of an adoption of e-wallets, at least not like we will in developing markets. I think there'll still be an increase, just not as much.
Yeah, absolutely, Francis. And I agree. It's nice to see us all agreeing for once, which is great. And yeah, I completely agree with what you've added to the conversation as well. I think it's just something that's a really interesting thing. And I really like digital wallets and like e-wallets, or whatever you want to call them, as a concept, just like I was saying before, because they are such a good example of fintechs bridging a gap and solving a problem where a problem needs to be solved. So it'll be interesting to see how the market reacts, I guess, over the next couple of years or so with things going digital. But anyway, let's move on to our last article today with Francis. Why don't we take a look at yours?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to talk about this article today, about some findings from SmartSave, a Chetwood Financial company, because it was really talking about financial management in the UK specifically. But for some reason, I feel like this week I've seen loads of articles and findings about how users are really sort of becoming more aware and sort of putting more focus into financial management and ensuring that they're setting themselves up for success. And because of that, I thought, again, it was quite a timely thing to be talking about. So in the article, the findings found that 33% of respondents believe their own financial management will put them in a better financial position this time next year. So in its independent nationally representative survey of 2,000 UK adults, the digital bank found that the general consensus surrounding financial situations was positive. 43% of the respondents expressed that they were optimistic about their financial situations over the next 12 months. So in addition to their own self-confidence, though, surrounding financial management, Another reason UK adults have such a positive outlook on their situations is because of an expected salary increase. Around 29% of people believe that they are going to get some more money in the next 12 months, and because of that, they're optimistic. And similarly, 29% of respondents also said that making the most of savings opportunities will also result in a better financial year. Combining more money with more savings, I mean, it does seem like a no-brainer, right? But just under a quarter of the respondents, 24%, said that they expect their circumstances to improve due to the confidence that the state of the UK economy is improving. And a similar figure named that falling inflation was also a significant factor in a reason for a better 2024-2025. So with all that in mind, I wanted to sort of put it over to you guys really and get your opinions on, do you agree that the next 12 months are going to be very good? Because of course, I think in 2023, there was sort of like a bit of a bleak outlook on the financial year, and we started off in a very difficult situation in 2024 with sort of like the cost of living crisis. And I mean, not to say that that's gone away completely, but it does feel like we are on a bit of a road to recovery now. So do you guys think we're in for a good year? And do you agree with the reasons that a salary increase and sort of more savings are going to be the primary reasons for, I suppose, a better year? What do you think, Polly? I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think, to start with, I think it's actually really nice to see some positivity around sort of like finances and people's financial situations. I think that just as a whole, I think it's really nice to see that people do have a positive outlook when it comes to their own financial situation. I think it's a tricky one, really, because I think with people saying, they're expecting to get like a pay rise and stuff like that, I guess that's something that you can't necessarily guarantee. So is it like false hope or something to sound like a really horrible take on things? But at the end of the day, I think and I don't know, I'd be interested to know what you guys think, but I do feel like there is kind of, I don't want to say a trend, because I don't think trend is the right word for it, but there's definitely like an air of financial management and like responsible finances kind of like in society at the moment. Like I'm seeing it a lot on social media with like a lot of different people sort of like taking control of their finances and making like a lot of content about it, and then a lot of different apps are coming in and like trying to sort of boost that with people as well. So I thought I think there's definitely an air of working on your finances, especially for people like around our like millennials and Gen Z. There's kind of that need to think about finances. So I think that this article is definitely like reflecting what I've kind of seen in my own sort of experience of society, and I think it's definitely something that I think is going to get better and is going to improve, especially after, what has been quite a terrible couple of years when it comes to sort of the economic situation and all of that, like going from a pandemic straight into a financial crisis was not great. So yeah, I can see how it's going to be a thing. I do worry that people take a lot of stock in falling inflation rates, because I do think people don't necessarily understand what inflation means. And this is just like a random thing that I've seen, because I know they mentioned it in the article, because obviously inflation has been like really soaring at the moment, and the inflation rate has gone down or either stayed the same. And I think a lot of people think that means things are going to get cheaper, and that's not necessarily what inflation means. It's just things that are going to get more expensive slower. Or like not as quickly. So I do think I am worried that maybe people are thinking that is gonna be, a thing like people that like, because if inflation rates are falling, then the price is gonna come down, and that's gonna be a better situation for them. So I hope that's not the case, and people have thought about it that way. But I am confident that the economy is getting better, and I am confident that things are going to get better for a lot of people when it comes to savings and finances and different financial products. I mean, I'm hoping it does, because it would be nice in the next few years to like not have to worry about money and rising inflation rates and rising mortgage rates and things like that. So yeah, I'm hopeful. I am with all these people that have been surveyed. I'm very hopeful that it's going to be positive.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is definitely an important point to raise about inflation, that, it doesn't mean things are now going to be, I don't know, 10% cheaper all of a sudden overnight. It's just like you said, it is just a more gradual thing rather than a steep slope. I think when we're sort of talking about like these positive attitudes, I feel like a lot of it does sort of reside in just the general attitude that people take. I feel like if people have a very negative attitude, thinking that, we're going to lose money, I'm not going to be able to afford this, then they sort of go into almost like a panicked state of mind and almost spend too much in fear that they're not going to be able to afford something later on. Whereas I think if people have a mindset of, let me just put a bit of money aside, even if inflation should sort of, from a negative standpoint, sort of take off again, people have this reserve that they can then sort of almost rely on. And I think it's quite interesting that both an increased salary and savings are the two primary reasons, according to this research, that people are optimistic. And I suppose you're right. It is, people can't put too much stock in a pay rise, but if they do get one and then are able to put that extra money aside, I think it's just the perfect sort of doomsday preparation thing if times should be tough. So yeah, I think it's definitely a good thing. And even if times don't get difficult again, the money is still going to be there, and then people can spend it on things that, I suppose, more luxuries. But yeah, Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you've both hit the nail on the head. You've both certainly covered the sort of points that I wanted to make. I would be really interested to know about how people's confidence in getting a salary increase would change or does change every year. Like, I wonder if people are just generally confident because they're trying to be optimistic about their pay. They're like, oh, we'll get a pay rise this year. Or if it's driven by the fact that reduced inflation is what's going on right now, and that's driving people's confidence. I had a really similar thought to Polly about people's understanding of inflation as well when you were going through the story, because obviously it's something that people often misunderstand and think if inflation reduces, prices reduce, which obviously it doesn't. But overall, I think the economic situation does look very positive, and it hopefully means that people will be better off than they have been in the last 2 or 3 years. And sort of talking from a personal standpoint, I think hopefully inflation continues to fall, but we can keep some of these higher interest rates on our savings for as long as we can, because that's something that is going to have a huge impact on people's savings, obviously, and their everyday spending. And if people can leave money in the account and get a reasonable return from it every month, that's something that can play a huge factor in just people's everyday sort of financial management. So yeah, I think there are reasons to be optimistic, but there's not reasons to get carried away just yet with spending all your money. And hopefully it's just a trend that continues for the long term.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is that just because people are like excited about the future, that doesn't mean book 17 holidays for, I don't know, however long, and thinking that you have all the money in the world to spend. But no, I think it is a very interesting thing to keep an eye on, to see how attitudes really change over the next few months. It'll be interesting to see if sort of as we head into Q4, if people are going to start thinking perhaps a little bit more negatively, because I don't know, I feel like summer just does bring more optimism, doesn't it? So it'll be interesting to see if over time people sort of, as it gets to the new year, they get a little bit more concerned and worry more. But let's hope that's not the case, and that we are in for a good 12 months.
Absolutely. So anyway, thank you guys so much for bringing those articles today. That brings us to the end of the discussion. If you want to hear anything more about what we've talked about today or anything else about the fintech world, head on over to thefintechtimes.com, where we've got plenty of news and insights over there. But quickly, let's do what I learned this week. So each week we have so much new information and insights crossing our desks, being on the Fintech Times editorial team, that we thought it'd be fun to share what we're learning with our listeners. So Francis, what have you learned this week?
So this week I learnt that Nubank, the digital banking platform serving customers across Brazil, Mexico and Colombia, is celebrating its successful expansion into Mexico 1 year after its launch of Cuenta in the country, and it has amassed over 8 million customers and $3.3 billion in deposits, which is considerably more than the same time frame that when Nubank launched in Brazil. So it's doing very, very well, and will be interesting to see if it continues to do so.
Awesome stuff. Thank you. And Tom, what have you learned this week?
This week, I was intrigued by new research from ClearScore and the Money Charity, which found that 73% of UK adults didn't receive any education on money during their time at school, despite 68% saying they would have benefited from it.
Fantastic. And then what I learned this week is that a new research from Zero found that only 33% of small businesses offer Apple Pay or Google Pay, which just seems crazy to me. But anyway, guys, thank you so much once again for joining me. It's great to have the whole gang back together finally on a podcast. It has been a pleasure talking about fintech with you, and I will catch you on the next one.
See you guys next week.
See you guys then.
Thanks for listening to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Don't miss next week's episode and continue the conversation using hashtag TFT News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times.